'cause your mind's reaction is doing nothing for you. Here's the law, the love and attraction. I'll show you what I can do. You know you find a result now. You know just what to do.
Hey guys, Mike and Bev here, back from the cottage again, and it's tomato time. This time of year is a boon of tomatoes everywhere.
Tomatoes are taken over, mate. We've done every night this week managing tomatoes. So tomato sauce, dehydrated tomatoes, tomato paste.
Salsa.
Everything tomato. So anyway, we're going to show you today on how to make tomato sauce and also how we dehydrate the tomatoes.
Right from the picking all the way through to the finished product. Okay, sit back and enjoy.
Hi guys, we've just had a huge rainstorm and now we've decided we better get out here and pick some of the tomatoes before they start to break open. When the tomatoes get wet, they hate wet feet, so they die off, and we had 110 millimeters of rain yesterday, and we can see the tomatoes here are all hiding in the grasses. So when you look, sometimes you don't see any tomato, you just see the trees. It's a tomato field, but all the rain has started to make the tomatoes turn turtle and die back. And here you can see how many tomatoes there are underneath the undergrowth. So looking at that, we've got plenty to do. This is just one little patch, and every tree on this property, just about, has tomatoes on it. So there'll be tomatoes coming in tonight, and I can see maybe some more tomato sauce. So after we've picked our tomatoes, so what I do, I usually fill the bowl up with a bit of water, and this is where the time is taken. Just actually washing them all, give them all a nice big rinse off. Then we've got to take off the tops.
So Bev does all the work in this and I get all the glory just because I make the sauce and that's it.
Not all the work, but it is quite a lot of work at night.
Now the reason we grow cherry tomatoes is because the larger tomatoes here in Queensland attract the fruit fly, and fruit fly end up with being lots of grubs inside the tomatoes and a lot of unusable tomatoes.
When these are ready, I tip them onto tablecloth, tea towels, just to dry them out. And we've dried these ones overnight, so they're lovely and dry, ready for dehydrating. So you can see they're all checked. So the next step in this is to get your nice dry tomato, and then I usually just cut them in halves. They're so tiny anyway, they're going to dehydrate up quite quickly. We do it for around 8 hours to start with, and on 70 degrees. So they'll be dehydrated 8 hours, 70 degrees.
That's 70 degrees Celsius.
Celsius, yes. And then if they're not quite dry enough, we'll check them and put them on probably an hour and a half increments after that. So they might take 10 hours. But during that process, I'll check them, and some will dehydrate. The smaller ones like this will dehydrate quite quickly. Something like that will take a bit longer. So then we'll pick out the dried ones and leave some in. Okay, once you've got enough on your chopping board, time to transfer them over to the tray. Sit them so the skins are at the bottom and the cut parts are at the top. So we'll fill this all up. I've got all of the tomatoes cut. What I do is give them a sprinkle with garlic salt, and this is our homegrown dehydrated garlic and some Himalayan salt mixed up together. So just a light sprinkle over them, just gives them that extra little bit of zing and also preserves them a bit. So they will just give them a sprinkle and into the dehydrator. So So we hope to fill the whole of the dehydrator up, and then we'll write in the temperatures and the amount of time that we use.
Okay, here's the dehydrated tomatoes. Now, at the moment, we put them on for 8.5 hours initially, but they've been on for a couple of extra 2-hour increments, up to 14.5 hours now, I think it is. Now, as you can see, these are still a little bit moist, and we need to dry them out a little bit more. If you're going to put them in oil, this would be great like this, but we don't have ours in oil, so we like them a little bit more dried out. So they'll go on for probably about another hour, and we'll see how we go then. So all up, it has been 15.5 hours for these tomatoes to dehydrate. So it's 15.5 hours at 70 degrees Celsius. And these will store in the cupboard for around about 6 months for a tasty snack for our salads and to use on pizzas and everything as well. They should keep for around about 12 months, but we tend to go through them a little bit quicker than that. Okay guys, we've got a lot more tomatoes than what we can deal with just in the dehydration, so we're making sauce. Now, this sauce is the basis for a whole heap of other sauces that we use, and what we use in the foods as well. We use it in risotto, spaghetti bolognese, things like making smoky barbecue sauce, and also making our date sauce for okonomiyaki as well. Now, with the basis of the tomato sauce, first that we have to do is weigh out the tomatoes so we can get all of the measurements right. Now, it's a very easy tomato sauce. It's only got around about 6 ingredients, but it is a very, very tasty sauce. Now, this recipe calls for 3.6 kilos of tomatoes, but I have a feeling we're going to have more like 4 kilos. So as a part of this, we'll just show you a little quick and easy calculation to figure out your multiplier for the rest of your recipe ingredients. We've ended up with 4.5 kilos of tomatoes, so I was a little bit out on my guesstimation. We'll put the calculation for how to calculate the different weights in the recipe just down below. So click on the arrow, drop it down, and you'll have the recipe there. Now we've got our weights for our tomatoes, which is 4.5 kilos, and they're all in the pot. The other ingredients is salt, sugar, vinegar, cloves, and cayenne pepper. So a really, really easy recipe. So our sugar for this recipe is 850 grams, so we have that in here. And this just goes into the pot on top of the tomatoes. Now you don't skin the tomatoes, you don't do anything to tomatoes, you just tip them in the pot. As you can see, they're all whole, nothing's been done to them at all. Now for the salt, we have 106 grams of salt, straight into the top. And for the vinegar, it's 2.5 cups of vinegar. So we just use white vinegar. So now we've got the cloves. Now the cloves, we've got 1.5 tablespoons, or 1.25 tablespoons of cloves, sorry. Straight in the top. And 1.25 teaspoons of cayenne pepper. And that's straight in the top there as well. Now along with these, we need either 2.5 large onions, but we only have the small to medium variety here, so we're going to go with 4 onions. So I'll just chop these up and we'll put that in the pot. And then, so we'll pick that up, just take it over to the pan and scrape it in. Now, and put the sauce on the gas. Then once it heats up a bit, we'll give it a bit of a stir just to make sure that the liquid is moving around and it's not going to burn to the bottom. And then we just let it keep boiling until we get the stick blender in and mush everything up. And then keep it boiling down and reducing until it becomes a sauce consistency. And continually stirring as well, just to make sure that it doesn't burn to the base. Now we cook ours in a stainless steel pot. we start off on a high heat, but make sure that while it's cooking and boiling, that you just give it a stir every now and again just to make sure that everything's moving and not adhering to the base of the pan. You know, we usually use a wooden spoon, or we've got a favourite silicone spoon as well that we use. And we just stir everything in and around. There's not a lot of liquid coming out of the tomatoes just yet, but we will get everything down to the bottom and in and helping it to get all of that liquid out of the tomatoes. Now, you can see now it's been around about 15 minutes and you can see the liquid starting to come up into the mix. So what we're going to do now, blend some of the tomatoes down. Now you can see now that most of those whole tomatoes have disappeared and it's taken on more of a saucy sort of texture. Come over and we turn the sauce down to low and let it simmer away. But as you can see, it is ready to go now. So we'll just get it all up into the moulis and strain it as we go. Okay guys, now we've reduced our tomatoes down to a nice thickened sort of state. We'll ladle them out of the pot into the moulis, and then we just turn the moulis and the sauce goes into the base of the jug, ready to be poured in the waiting bottles. Now, using the moulis in this way eliminates all of the skins, the seeds, and the cloves that were in there as well. And we get a really beautiful sauce out of it. Now, the solids that get left, we use for bases for pizzas and a few other different bits and pieces of cooking that we do, just to enhance the flavour and just so we don't have any waste around the place as well. Well, 4.5 kilos of tomatoes should get you between 3 and 4 bottles of sauce. That's 1 litre bottles. So once we've got the mixture pushed through the moulis, we then take up the jug and just with a funnel fill up our 1 litre bottles. There you can see the consistency of the sauce. It's quite thick, but still pourable. So just like a good sauce should be.